You know, when I became 11 years old, I started having seizures, and the doctors had no idea what was causing these seizures. I went through many tests, electrodes hooked to my head. They would induce seizures to try to figure out what part of the brain was having a problem. Did she have a tumor? You know, what is going on? And these seizures lasted from the time that I was about 11 years old until I was 15. And when I was 15, we had a brief little time that we lived in South Dakota. And some of the doctors that were there had this really bright idea that they wanted to, again, induce these seizures. But this time they took me off of all my medication. The medication that I had been on, I guess had been working because I was seizure-free for a while, but still, there was still this ominous, and my mom was Western medicine, so she wanted to know exactly what was going on. So they induced seizures, and then they couldn't get them stopped. And I'll never forget how it felt to have all these electrodes and to start to go into a seizure that I couldn't control. Because you see, when I was 11 years old and I started having these seizures, even though my mom was the Western medicine nurse, she also would say, "Brandy, you can control this." She'd say, "You have the power to stop this." And at 11, 12, 13, you're impressionable. You want to believe that. And I had seen all these miracles, but this is something she's telling me I could do within my own body. It wasn't a medicine man. It wasn't, you know, an outside source coming to me to help me. This was all inside. When I found that the morning that I would be getting ready to have a seizure, notoriously I'd have a disconnected feeling in my head, and I don't know what that was from, but I would identify it. I'd be like, I can tell that something's amiss. And Mom would say, "Focus on something." And so it could have been anything. If I was at home, it could have been, you know, something that was laying on the floor or something on a shelf, and I would focus laser hard at that one thing, and I would override that feeling that I was going into. So the seizures that I would have oftentimes, well, all the time, started out just being a dizzy spell is what I would call it. The whole world would start spinning, and then if it triggered into a full-blown grand mal seizure, well, that was that, and then I was out, and I had, you know, the migraine to the point where I was blind. There would be one spot in my vision that would be open, and it would be blinking. I'd go completely blind, then I could see through this hole, completely blind, see through this hole. So that was so scary at the time, and I'd always try to override that with everything that I had. You know, I wanted nothing more than to be better, and there was no other option. There was no medical advice. There was nothing that they could say that would fix me. The only thing that I had was my mom saying, "Brandy, you can control this." So with everything that I had in me, I would focus at that. 11 years old, 12 years old, 13, 14, finally 15. And I got so proficient at finding that spot, finding that honed-in spot that I could override, triggering into this extra scary place. Now, as time went by and I became 13, the last thing I wanted to be was in 8th grade and have a seizure, right? And there was no better practice that I had at all than to be in the lunch line. 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, please, all around me. Can you imagine? And start to feel this? That space, I had to absolutely push everything away from me. I had to find what I was taught to be called your hochoka, your center. I had to be so deep inside myself, regardless of what was happening around me, you see? And it was a practice. And so at that point in time, I thought that I was just dealt a bad hand. I thought that I was dealt something that, you know, woe is me. But it is what it is, so you rise above and you deal with it. but it was the best practice I could have ever have asked for, because it taught me that space, that laser focused space that was able to push everything away. Any amount of chaos didn't matter. If I could do it in a, middle school, no amount of chaos mattered. And when I was 15 and they induced seizures, couldn't get them stopped. My dad ran out to the truck and he got his sage and his medicine, and he brought it in and he started to smudge, and all the doctors, no, you can't do that. Nurses, no. Well, you try to tell my dad that. His baby is suffering. There was nothing that was going to stop him. And so he smudged me with that same feather that he would smudge me with if I woke up and came to him in the middle of the night saying I had a bad dream. It was that same feather that he would pray with every single day of his life. And that medicine, our sage that we burn that clears energy, like that. Anything that's dark, gone. And right like that, smudge me, even after the doctors are doing everything they can, and I'm seizing, and will not stop. Stopped, just like that. So again, what was the guiding force? What was the leading force in that scenario? Was it the physical world? Was it the medicines, physical? Was it the doctors? Was it the nurses? Or was it spirit, energy, Tunkashla, creator, universe, all the same thing? It's the common thread. Again, another opportunity for me to realize what reached in and pulled me out of the scenario that I was in. Gratefully, that all ended well. My dad was furious, but it ended well. I ended up weaning myself off of that medication because I felt like, this isn't for me, it's a physical thing. You can control this. So I decided that that was what I was going to do.